Knitting Daily has been sponsored in part by Lion Brand Yarn, our quality shows since 1878. LionBrand.com.
Zontee Ho is back with the final section of our fallen leaf scarf knit-along. And I think we're working on the final two texture patterns, is that right?
That's right. So we're going to be starting off with our basket weave pattern.
Okay, and let's take a look at it actually in the pattern, what the stitch explanation for that looks like.
Great. So what you're first going to notice is that we have the stitch explanation at the top. You're going to actually pair that with the pattern itself. And so you'll see that in this pattern, once we get past our two-tone slip stitch pattern, we actually are going to decrease one stitch before we actually start our basket weave. And that's because the stitch counts on both don't actually match up. One is 33, and the next section needs to be a multiple of 4.
So we're going down to 32 stitches.
Exactly.
Okay, good to know.
Great.
And it looks like your knit 4, purl 4. That's really a 4x4 rib, basically.
Yeah, it's like a 4x4 rib, but I like to think of it as a checkerboard, because what you're doing is actually offsetting it every other section.
And let's take a look at that actually in the fabric. It's really easy to see what you mean then. Here's your 4x4 rib, and then in the next section it's offset.
That's right.
So let's go ahead and knit a little bit.
Yeah. And what I really like about something like this is that visually you can really understand it pretty easily once you've done it a couple of times. So I can see that I've got my knit stitches facing out, so I'm going to knit these 4 stitches.
That's one.
We've got 3, and then the last one. Then we're actually going to bring our yarn to the front, and we're going to go ahead and purl 4.
And is every row going to be a variant of knit 4, purl 4, or
That's exactly right.
Are there any other rows that that come in between?
We actually do have one row that's just knit in between, so that you have a little bit of a transition.
And now you're going back to knit 4, right?
That's right. And that's in this particular version of the basket weave that we're doing. But if you wanted to have no offset row to actually transition, you can do that as well. And that's really a personal choice.
And why don't we take a look at the back of the fabric actually for a second?
Sure. What's really great is that there you see the back of the knit row, which on this side will look like a purl row. And you see that the back and the front really look basically the same, because the back of a knit section on the front is now a purl section on the back. That's something I really love about basket weave. It's really versatile because it is the same on the front and the back.
It looks good on both the front and the back. Another thing that's worth pointing out here is that the stitch pattern lies completely flat.
Yes.
Which is great.
It's really great, and that's why this is a pattern I really like for things like scarves, especially because if you are looking for a pattern that uses your yarn really efficiently, basket weave will lay flat. It uses the yarn in a really efficient way, and you're going to get the most mileage out of your yarn.
Well, great. And now let's go back to the pattern, and we'll take a look at the next texture pattern, which is seed stitch, right? And I see here we need to go back to an odd number of stitches is what the pattern says, but we're at 32
exactly right.
now.
So before you go from your basket weave to your seed stitch in that transition row, you're actually going to increase one.
Okay.
And that's going to bow out your pattern just a little bit. You see here we have a little bit of extra fabric out as compared to our basket
But
weave.
that blocks out with no problem.
Exactly.
And this is fun because there's only one row according to the pattern. And let's take a look at what that looks like in the fabric.
That's right. So the great thing about seed stitch is that you just do the opposite of whatever was done in the last row. So if I see a knit stitch in front of me, I'm going to purl. If I see a purl stitch in front of me, I'm going to knit.
Okay, and just show everybody here for a second, this first stitch is a knit.
That's right. So since I'm doing the opposite of what I just did, on that last row, I'm going to purl this stitch. This next one is a purl, so I'm going to knit that.
And you're moving your yarn back and forth between every stitch because you're alternating between knits and purls, right?
That's exactly right. And so that can take a little bit longer because you're actually moving back and forth, but it does make for a really wonderful texture that, again, is reversible, like the basket weave, and so it looks good on both sides.
And this is actually truly identical on both sides.
Exactly. Right? And actually something that I really like about seed stitch is that if you think about it as, again, that checkerboard concept, it's like a one-by-one checkerboard where each stitch alternates back and forth.
So let's knit just a few more stitches and show people again, what that looks like on the needles.
So again, we see a purl stitch, so I'm going to be knitting. And then a knit stitch, so I'm going to purl.
And really, it's just back and forth. Knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one.
Exactly. And so you can get into a really great rhythm with this. This is something that you'll see a lot on sweaters or other garments as a border. Actually, the sweater I'm wearing right now has a seed stitch border, and it has that really nice ability to lay really flat and look very neat.
Well, great. And then when you finish up these sections, you go back, let's go all the way over to the scarf here. And if you've been knitting along with us, the first thing that we did was this great two-color slip stitch pattern, right?
That's right.
And then we moved to the basket weave pattern, then to the seed stitch pattern, and then finally, this is the same two-color slip stitch pattern, is that right?
Exactly. It's the same exact pattern. All you've done is actually take the colors from the middle instead of the colors from the end. If you have enough yarn left over, you could actually do this color pattern again if you prefer that. But we like to switch it up a little bit and work in these colors.
Well, and you can really customize it however you want. You can make them as long as you want or as short as you like.
Absolutely. And you can take these patterns and turn them into individual scarves on their own if you like that as well.
Well, what a great project. Thanks so much, Zontee. And if you want to knit along with us, the full pattern is available on the web.
Knitting Daily has been sponsored in part by Lion Brand Yarn, our quality shows since 1878. LionBrand.com